Hello, my friends. I'm Sam Hardesty, a certified life coach, and welcome to the Authentic Entrepreneur Podcast. Hey, friends. Thanks for tuning into another episode. Today, we are having a guest on, which I'm so excited about. Ashley Arsena is a certified financial planner at Shaker Investments, an independent RIA focused on research-based investment management. Since joining the firm in 2016, Ashley has showcased her versatility by taking on various roles at Shaker Investments. Currently, Ashley dedicates her expertise as business development and client service specialist to empower her clients in accomplishing their aspirations and realizing their full potential. So her clientele spans from individuals seeking to secure their financial future in retirement to nonprofit organizations with endowment, covering a wide range of needs and aspirations. Ashley is actually recognized by AdvisorHub as a top 50 women advisors to watch in 2023. She's legit, guys. So Ashley has her bachelor's degrees from Baldwin Wallace University and a certificate, from financial planning from New York University School of Professional Studies. In her free time, which how does she have any? And she actually enjoys nothing more than cherishing moments with her wife and 2 young children. You can typically find them at golf courses during the summer months, which I've golfed with Ashley, guys, and she's legit. But there's always one winner, and I think we know who that is. So when she's not with her children, Ashley serves on the board of Hope for Kids Geauga, a nonprofit that raises funds and awareness for abused, neglected, and at-risk youth of Geauga County. So not only is she like top advisor in 2023, she also golfs, so that's a thing, and she helps little kids, so on top of her family duties. So Ashley is actually, so this is something that's really interesting. I've never done this on the podcast yet. Ashley's our first guest podcaster who is not an entrepreneur, and this is such an interesting experience in the sense of, all of my guests have all been entrepreneurs. They own their own business, right? But with Ashley, like, you don't get the vibe that, she's an employee and she has a 9-to-5 job in this corporate, like, I feel like as entrepreneurs, we also like stereotype corporate people. Ashley doesn't give off those vibes at all. If that's a caveat for anyone. Super cool and just fun to hang out with and talk with. And I love that she puts so many things in layman's terms. Like, I realize financial literacy is something that most people are unaware of, or they don't even know what that means. I've been privy to, my father is a certified financial planner. So like, I grew up with a money mindset. I grew up with financial literacy. So I made sure to ask so many questions for everyone just to get back to the basics. Let me know what you guys think. If you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out. At the minimum, connect with Ashley. I mean, she has some incredible offers going on just for you guys. So make sure you reach out to her and get hopping on the financials. Yeah. All right, guys. Have fun. Hey, Ashley. Nice seeing you.
Hey, Sam. How are you?
I am doing fabulous. I'm so excited about our talk today. So let's just open the floor. Tell us all about you, who you are, what you do, why you got into all the things.
Yeah, I mean that's a pretty loaded question, but I'll do my best. So my name's Ashley Arsena. I am a certified financial planner with a company called Shaker Investments in Beechwood, Ohio. That's what I do by day. By night, I am a wife, a mother of 2 young children. I also serve on some various boards just to keep active in the community. Um, and I think you know this from our personal relationship, but I like to golf.
Oh,
And
yes.
I get my son's 5, and I get him in all sports necessary to kind of. My rule is try everything once. So sign him up for football this year. He didn't love it. I don't think he's ever going to play football again, but he did it and he signed up once. So at the end of the day, I always ask him, "What's your favorite sport?" And it always comes back to golf, which makes me pretty excited.
Hey, that's great news. Got to start teeing them up young, right?
Yeah, I mean, he hits a good ball. I mean, sometimes he gets it off the tee better than I do.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. What a cutie. I love it. Okay, so funny question is, well, I'm hoping for a funny answer. What is the funniest or craziest thing you have ever done?
Ah, wow, that's tough. And I got to keep it, I guess, PG for the podcast as well, right? So probably think an instance and fitting because it's snowing outside here in Cleveland. Um, when I was a kid, we were sledding. I was with my friends. We always go in my friend Zach's backyard and sled in. He had woods. So we'd find the craziest areas to sled. It wasn't safe at all, but we were kids. And I remember going down this sledding hill, and I'll always remember it. And I didn't know how to steer my sled. And so it kind of just went where I went. And I went to the side that I wasn't supposed to go to, and there was a tree down. So I hit, it was like a ramp.
Oh, no.
The sled went. I did a backflip in the air, and I actually landed on the sled in the water.
What?
So it's actually one of those things. Gosh, I must have been like 10.
Yeah.
So, we're talking decades ago. And I just remember landing on that sled and looking around and my friends being like, "We thought you were going to die." And like, I was laughing, So probably one of my most memorable, fun, youth experiences.
Just like parkour vibes. I love that. And you know what's really interesting is when you're in those moments where you're like, oh shit, like I'm gonna die. Like, or like be
Oh, yeah.
very hurt. I remember so I caddied when I was in high school, like I was a golf caddy. And I remember I was further out, and the guys were teeing off the tee box. And I remember that ball was whizzing so fast and hard, and I'm like, this is going to hit my thigh. Like
Hmm.
it was a bad shot, and it was coming right at me. And I just remember clenching my entire body and just like, well, it was nice knowing you, leg. Like this is gonna suck. It missed me probably by like 4 inches, maybe. And I just remember like, but then you like it is a thing where you're like, oh my god, I'm alive. Like this is fabulous news. And then you go on the day like that never happened kind of thing. But
Yeah. All your years golfing, have you ever been hit by a golf ball?
um no, I it's been very close though.
Okay.
Like I've had it where or even Ian, my husband, like when we do golf tournaments or something, and if I'm in the cart or something, I'll have people like hit the cart and it like, bounces around in there and kind of stuff, but I've not once been hit. Knock on wood, like there's still many years ahead of me, so can't say it's never going to happen, but for how involved golf is in our life. But um yeah, okay, so that's pretty funny. That's good to know.
Learn something new about me.
all the things. I love all the new things. Okay, so I want to open this up for like layman's terms, big picture, like just I feel like there's so much wisdom you can provide to like the people in their 20s and 30s, like the younger generations that are getting into the financial realm, or rather like they're having to deal with their own finances and learning the consequences of their actions or inactions.
Hmm.
So like from that capacity, big picture, like what's a financial advisor? What does it mean to be a fiduciary?
Sure. Um, Gosh, lots of loaded questions here today.
Give us all the
Financial
spill all the beans.
advisor. Yeah, financial advisor is going to be basically any individual that has a profession in providing financial advice. And I know that kind of sounds like a silly answer, um, but that's basically what it is, right? So if anybody is looking for financial advice in any capacity, a financial advisor will be able to help. Now, I am a certified financial planner, which takes it a step further. It gives me a little bit more credential. So I'm a CFP professional. What that means is I had to go back to school for about a year or 2 year and a half, take an additional, I think it was about 7 courses, study for an exam. It was like a 6 or 7 hour, like all day exam where you go sit in like a dark room with a computer screen in front of you, and
The lights are
um,
blinking, flickering.
it's so daunting. So I'm proud to say I passed on my first time, and
Awesome.
then after that you have to get X amount of hours of experience under your belt before they give you the designation. So it's always a multi-year process for individuals when they go down the path to become a CFP. On top of that, you have to do more continuing education. So every year you have to log a certain amount of continuing education, and part of that is ethics. So basically, it's a way that the CFP board can make sure that CFP professionals are continuing to be good people. And
Mhm.
that kind of leads into your fiduciary question. What is a fiduciary? It's even crazy to talk about because I feel like everybody in our industry should be a fiduciary, right? It should be without said that people, professionals, are going to put their clients first and do what's best for them, regardless of what it's going to look like for me. So what that means is I have a duty to always put my clients first, even if it puts me second. So I can never do something that's best for me, but second for my client. I always have to do what's best for my client. Sometimes that means recommending that they don't work with me, and that's okay. And it's crazy, and that's kind of where like the gray line of like people in our industry maybe aren't fiduciaries all the time, because they obviously, you don't want to lose business, but at the same time, if you're not a good fit, if I can't provide you exactly what you're looking for or what you need, then maybe I'm going to refer you to somebody else at another financial firm that more specializes in what you're looking for.
Mhm. Yeah.
um yeah.
So like you brought up you go to school, you went to school to give financial advice. Or like that's essentially being a financial advisor. But then
Yep.
being a certified financial planner just gives you that like it's like the next level up when it comes
Hmm.
to that financial advice. Hey guys, I wanted to pause real quick and offer you guys access to my monthly email newsletter. This is something that I send out monthly. There's no like every other day email. It's literally just once a month email, but it gives you a full recap of everything that I am up to, everything that I'm doing, all of my offers, my podcast, my YouTube channel, any community events that I'm participating in or that I think are just super fun. You can learn about my Let's Start group coaching program. You can learn tips and tools monthly to help you also self coach. So, this is a free tool for you guys. Feel free to sign up, please, on my website at www.samhardistycoaching.com. That's Sam Hardesty, HARDESTY, coaching.com. Thank you so much, and I hope to connect with you there. So, in that capacity, though, like, I feel like maybe we always hear at holiday parties, especially, you have that like weird uncle that's like, hey, you should do this with your money or something, like, so like, are, are you taught how to give financial advice? Like, how does one do that?
Yeah, so you're taught when doing the CFP programming, you are taught a little bit of everything.
Mm-hmm.
Now I say that this is a not exhaustive list, but it's going to cover things like investments, insurance, tax, estate planning, um, a couple other like big broad topics. Just fundamentals of investing was one of the courses, and so you kind of learn enough about every topic in the financial world to be dangerous, but it doesn't make you necessarily a specialist in any way. At least that was my experience. Like, I learned about insurance. I'm not an insurance agent, so I can't sell insurance products. But when a client comes to me and asks about an insurance product, I can talk through with them what it is they're looking at, and then obviously refer them to a handful of insurance agents here in town that can help them further. The same with estate planning, right? To write a will or to make a trust, you have to be a lawyer.
Mhm.
That's that's how it is. And but I know enough about the estate planning process. I know enough about trust that I can help people and talk through it with them, but I'm not at the end of the day that person. Um I am I say I'm a specialist more in the investment side. Now, every CFP professional, most financial advisors just in general, kind of niche in on something.
Mhm.
And sometimes it's more just like building the holistic plan for the younger professionals. Sometimes it's helping people draw on Social Security and Medicaid planning. For me, it's more of the investment side of things. How do we line up your investments in your overall portfolio to best serve you based on your goals and where you're at in your life to best serve you down the road.
Got it. Okay, I have many questions. But for those that like are probably hearing you speak and then they're starting to get overwhelmed with terms that they're like, I don't know. Not out of a place of like they're not smart, but out of a place like maybe they were never taught this, or maybe
Hmm.
they never, went to college and got a business degree or whatever. So like there's certain terms and things that maybe just scare them and overwhelm them.
Sure.
So in layman's terms, like what does it mean to invest? And like so that like that's question one. But then also like what does investing look like?
Yeah, so investing can look many different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to pause because there's not just one way to invest, right? So investing in the most simplistic terms is you open up kind of like a bank account. It could be an IRA or it can just be a brokerage account. And you do it at a custodian such as a Charles Schwab, Fidelity, TD Ameritrade, and you find something that you want to buy. And basically what you're doing is taking a sum of money and putting it towards that investment. Usually it's a company, could be a group of companies and like a fund, an index fund. And the goal is to pick a company that is going to increase in value over time. And as that company increases in value over time, the price of that stock for that company should also increase in value over time, thus making money in the long run. And I'm sorry, what was the second part of that question?
That's okay. What does investing look like then?
Yeah, so investing looks different for everyone. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's $100, $1,000, $100,000, right? So, um, before you do any type of investing, it's always appropriate to think about your goals, think about what it is you're going to achieve, think about the time frame you want to achieve that in. And from there you can kind of look at and identify different investment options that can help achieve those goals. I have people that prefer to do it on their own. I think this is kind of the generation that we're in is everybody wanted to buy their own, pick their own stocks and buy their own stocks. And so some people just say, hey, I think Crocs is a great company. I think they're going to grow rapidly over time. I think their stock price is going to appreciate. I'm going to put part of my portfolio in Crocs stock. There's other people that want less hand in it, and they're going to say, look, the S&P 500 is the 500 largest companies in the US market. I'm going to buy a fund that groups those 500 companies, tracks those 500 companies, and I'm just going to invest in all 500. I can buy the one fund, it's going to invest across those 500 companies. Hopefully, those 500 companies continue to do well.
Got it. So I guess it's almost as if, and I'll put this in like business owner speak, kind of, is generally when you start a business, the thought is you invest in some money, like 1,000, 10,000, depends on the business, whatever. Then in like you generally pay for like startup costs and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff, with the hopes that you put money in, then it starts making money back. It grows.
Yeah, and if you
So
want to think about it in that way too, Sam, I mean, we invest every day in everything that we do, right? I mean, I invest in my kids and spending time with them and teaching them and hoping that they're going to, grow to be well-rounded, intelligent, respectful young individuals.
mhm.
I'm investing in myself, when I go to the gym, or when I decide to eat a healthier meal versus a cheeseburger.
Yeah.
So if you think about the decisions that we make on a daily basis, and you become more cognizant of it, I think you would find that every individual invests in themselves and in the things around them on a very regular basis. It's just not the exchange of money.
Yeah.
And sometimes it is the exchange of money, right?
Yeah, but I love that, even just that, it kind of just opens up that awareness of,
Yeah.
I think we all know when we invest in ourselves for, like you said, going to the gym or eating healthier, or sometimes in, we'll say, oh, I'm going to invest in this online course so I can learn some new skills and kind of things. So similar vibe. In this case, we're investing money in hopes that it's doing its job to make more money.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's
so
always one thing I tell my friends, tell my clients is, let your money that you worked hard to earn work for you.
yeah.
And that meaning, hey, don't just let it sit in cash and lose purchasing power. let's
Mm,
let's invest it in something. um
yeah. So, what are some goals to consider when you're thinking about your future? Like you just said, hey, well, depending on what your goals are is dependent on what you should consider for investing. But like, what if someone has never invested before, has never been taught anything about money or investments? Like, what are some even goals they should be considering when it comes to investing?
Yeah, I don't think you've ever had to think about investing to know what the goals in your life are, right? So,
Mhm.
rather it's retire early. I think the average retirement age is, 60, 70, pushing 70s nowadays. But what is it? Is it retire at 55? Is it, still retire at the same age, but retire more comfortably? Buy a vacation home, buy a boat. Um, what is that goal? Is it to eventually quit your corporate job and start something that you really have a passion for, start doing more nonprofit work? Um it Everybody has a goal. If they actually sit down and think, what do I think my life looks like in 10 years, 15 years? That's the goal. And then how do I achieve that? For
Mhm.
some people, especially in our generation, it's a goal of being able to pay for college for their kids.
Mhm.
That is a financial goal. But how do you achieve that? And obviously, the earlier you start thinking about it and taking course of action to achieve those goals, the sooner you'll get there.
That's really interesting when you said, what are your goals in just 10, 15 years? Because us being in our 20s and our 30s, like, okay, well, I'm still alive by then. So I know, like, and I say that in a way of like, when you think about, oh, investing for your future, in my brain, it's like, oh, well, invest to retire, kind of like you were speaking into. But it's like, no, you can have goals that are much shorter than when you're 70, however years
Yep.
old. So, like, what are, like, why, well, I guess, why should people invest and, like, think about their financial future in their 20s and 30s when, when you look at it, it's like, well, I have, 40, 50 years before I have to worry about that. I'm putting that in
Yeah.
quotation marks. Like, why do we need to start worrying about this all now?
Yeah. Well, a couple things, right? First of all, we don't know what's going to happen in 10, 15, 20 years. Hopefully we're still healthy and working hard and in a position to save for retirement. But there's so much academic research out there, and I could just show you a chart of the compounding of returns, right? So if you put, for example, you start putting $200 a month in an investment portfolio, invest it, like I said, in like the 500 largest companies in an index fund, and you just keep doing that month after month after month. You start it today versus if you started 10 years ago. When you're 50 or 60 years old, the end dollar amount is going to be astonishingly different. And that just has to do with the art of the compounding return. The sooner you start, the better off you're going to be. And like I said, you don't know what your situation is going to be down the road. You might not be able to contribute that. Financial situation may change in your life. It might go from a one income household or a two income household to a one income household. So you never want to delay in saving. It's always best to start as soon as you can, and it doesn't matter what that dollar amount is. There are CFP guidelines column for how much you should save. I think they're around 10 to 12% of your gross income is what you should be saving for retirement. But that is such a guideline that, it's kind of one of those silly numbers that sometimes doesn't make sense. So it really just is always customizable to what that individual is working with.
Yeah. So how much like how much money do you need to retire at like the age of 70?
So that's a loaded question. There's not really an answer I can give you right off the bat. There are ways to come to that number. So it really just depends on what your lifestyle is at 70, what you want to do with your life at that point. Um, a lot of how much Social Security are you making at that same time? There's equations that you can use to kind of back into it. There's also projections that we run for our clients here at the office that kind of show, if you're investing in these different vehicles over that time period and you withdraw X amount of money at 100 years old, you're either going to be out of money or you're going to have X amount to give to your years.
And when you say vehicles, you're not meaning cars.
Not cars. No, you're right. Layman's term, I forgot. So vehicles meaning stocks, bonds, treasuries, different investment vehicles. So different ways to invest your money.
So like different
Typically,
categories.
different categories. So different risk return profiles. Think of it. So,
Mm-hmm.
investing in the stock market does come with a risk, and we won't get too much into that for compliance purposes. But there are riskier assets to invest in and less risky assets to invest in. So think of like U.S. Treasury bonds, for example, as more of a less risk asset versus investing in the stock market that can have um, more volatility, meaning the price of a stock can go up and down very quickly in a short period of time.
Mm-hmm. So going back to like the retiring at 70 thing, like what do you see like if you're like, okay, I want to live off of like 50,000 a year, that's what I've been making for the last however many years, and I want to retire at 70. Is that like I need to have like $1 million in the bank? I need to have like $10 million in the bank? Like what, and then whatever, and I know these numbers are not legit specific. So I'm not holding you to them in any capacity. But just so like people have a number in their brain of like, oh, like I need I need more money than, that's as a way of like start investing now kind of vibe.
Yeah, I think it depends on how much money you make, and that goes back to
Mhm.
the lifestyle, right? So most people don't need $10 million in their retirement portfolio to
Mhm.
retire at 70, right? So that's a pretty egregious amount of money.
Good to know.
Um, yeah, typically, and I think the CFP standard is going to say, this is the
Mhm.
standard again, it's just like the 10% savings, about 15 to 20 times what your take home salary is. That's the amount that you want in that portfolio when you retire. And it's been some time since I've looked at those numbers, so it might be a little bit different. But yeah, so if you're making, for example, $50,000 a year and you want to retire, um, you're thinking you want about 750 to $1 million, and that's as a family, right? So
Mhm.
that's you and your husband or spouse. But that's kind of the way that the CFP board wants you to think about it. There's
Mhm.
also a lot of conversation though about what you do with the assets again, how much you spend. People that save the right way on the money that they're bringing in, can spend the right way in retirement, there's going to be plenty of people that overspend. And
Mhm.
especially as we get older, you run into a little more, health insurance issues,
Mhm.
or health care, I should say,
Yeah.
payments that need to go out. But in thinking about how much you want to grow your investment portfolio too, um, personally, I would say you want to at least reach that seven figure mark, which
Got
is
it.
achievable. A lot of people say $1 million. That's unachievable. I think it's more achievable than some people think, as long as start saving earlier. I
Mhm.
think, just kind of a story. I've been doing this for about 7, 8 years now, and so I haven't been doing it as long, but my boss has been here doing this for 32 years now,
Mhm.
and we have clients here that have been with us for a long, long time, and there's a couple of them that we look at their portfolio, and we meet with them on an annual basis at least, and I hear stories about, I didn't think that this individual was going to be able to do this. I've met with them when they were, deep in their careers, call it 40 years old, and they were struggling financially. They weren't saving enough. One of those hard talks, and nobody wants to
Mhm.
have those hard talks, but we had one of those hard talks, like, hey, you're spending more than you're making, you're not helping yourself out, let's take a look at this. And we've got a couple clients now, that those specific clients, where you're looking at them and you're like, hey, no, you can spend your money now. Like, you're
Mhm. Mhm.
retired, you've built the wealth, you did the work, and like, they're still spending very frugally, because that's the life that they learn to live. And now it's like, no, like, unless you really like your kids and your grandkids and you want to leave all your money for them, go ahead and spend it. Live a little bit better, move into a better apartment, in the older age, buy that new car. So it's a different lifestyle that you have to kind of learn to live. That's the hardest part.
Yeah. So, like, what does it look like? You say, okay, I'm just rounding and making up numbers, so no one's
Hmm.
holding anybody to this. But, like, okay, if I need $1 million to retire, and I'm 30, what do I need to start doing now? Like, okay, what if I only make $40,000 a year? Or, like, what if I'm an entrepreneur and, like, I don't have a consistent income? Like, how like what are some habits, what are some things that we can be doing like tangibly now to kind of get us to at least on the right track to that $1 million down the road?
Yeah, I mean, living within your means is number one,
Mhm.
right? The one thing I do for me personally is right. I contribute to my 401k before I get my paycheck. So to me, I never saw it. It was never part of it. I know owning your own business, it's a little bit different. You have to be a little bit more intentional to contribute to your retirement accounts. But um, living within your means is number one. And I think our generation too has a problem with balancing living within your means, and you only live once, and wanting to live a certain lifestyle.
Mhm.
And we get a lot of bad rap if you read any of the like, news articles about spending too much money on our coffee and avocado toast.
Yeah.
And there's some truth to it, right? So there's a certain part of me that wants to just go get my Starbucks coffee every day, but then there's a certain part of me when I look at my credit card bill and I'm like, well, I spent $30 on coffee in 4 days, right? So
Mhm.
it's a nice balance of, making sure that you treat yourself well, and do well for yourself, but also making sure that you're doing well for your future self. And that, I think, is the most important part, is don't don't disrespect yourself today, just to save a couple extra bucks, but at the same time, don't put yourself in a situation that you're going to regret in 10, 15, 20 years. And I know there's a lot of people, especially on this podcast, like yourself, Sam, that, you know, you and Ian, for example, and I think your listeners know you by now a little bit.
Mhm.
Um, you guys, you do more than one thing.
Yeah.
You're a business coach, but you're also a photographer, and maybe you're gonna do some woodworking as well.
Mhm.
You're never stopping thinking about when the next dollar is going to come in. You obviously want it to be an enjoyable process, but I think especially in the early days, you need to be open to doing several things and kind of hustling to make things work before you have that steady eddy income coming in.
Yeah, and I really liked how you said don't disrespect yourself today for your future self, or I forget
Yeah.
what you said, but like the vibe, the vibe.
Yeah, I mean, like you still got to take care of yourself, but today for your future self. But at the same time, it's like, do I really need, those extra luxury things? Do I
Yeah.
really need those new pair of shoes? I've got 3 pairs that look just like it.
Right, right. Well, and I just feel like it really centers us. Even just like even just the phrase like don't disrespect yourself, and
Yeah,
it's so interesting because I think most people don't disrespect yourself. They think of that now, and it's like, okay, well, don't say mean things to yourself, and that kind of stuff. But it's also like, but also don't disrespect yourself in the future too,
yeah,
because like right now you might have like in business steady revenue, or like a client that bought a annual subscription to your services, or like like you're covering all your bills, and everything's cool in that way. But then so you might, like, when extra money comes, you might go and buy a $500 composter, or a $700 greenhouse, or
yeah,
you know things that I would of course never be speaking from an experience. I don't know anything about overspending or anything. um
yeah. And I don't know when this is going to be released. And sorry for interrupting.
no worries.
But I'm assuming it's going to be a kind of an appropriate time. One of the biggest mistakes that I see made in a financial sense,
Hmm.
it's not to do with investing. It has to do with the tax return. People get their tax return
Hmm.
after they file their taxes and they think they just like won the lottery.
Hmm.
And they're going to be like, okay, we're going to go on this trip, or I'm going to buy these things. And it's like, sometimes it's like, yeah, you need those things. I'm waiting for the tax return to buy that new refrigerator because money's tight,
Yeah.
right? But if you look at your tax return as a bonus, I think you're doing things a little bit wrong. I think of it as a tax return, right? You earn money along the way. You paid money into the federal government um, as withholdings, and it's really earned money that you worked hard for,
Hmm.
and you should continue to put that towards your goals. Um, and then one other thing, just talking about financial mistakes, and this is just broadly for everybody, right? A lot of our, I think, younger listeners would appreciate this a little bit more, is going to be that emergency fund. So, like, yeah, I'm going to hammer home that you got to invest, 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 save, save, save. First thing you got to do, though, is build that emergency fund. So, if you're a single individual or a two-income individual, household, you want about 6 to 12 months of all of your expenses, just saved in a very safe place for emergencies.
Hmm.
That is, like, for example, Sam, um, you know, me and my spouse, if we both were jobless, I want to be able to make sure that we can still pay for everything in our house, right? So our mortgage, our car payments, our utilities. I want to be able to make sure that we can live for about 6 to 12 months
Hmm.
um, while I continue to look for a new job. Hopefully that never happens, but you always want to make sure that you have that buffer there for those emergencies. You never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, and I think that's what a testament to, like, I think back as you're saying that to COVID, and I learned I think it's like over 50% of Americans don't have enough money to like pay the next month's bills.
Hmm.
And it's interesting because we think, oh well, savings isn't sexy, investing, that's not sexy, like oh my gosh, I have to spend money on this stuff, like I don't get anything out of it right now, right?
Hmm.
Because it just kind of floats away and it's not there, right? But I always think too is like, but what's extra not sexy is when shit hits the fan, or like when something comes up and you can't pay your bills, when
Yeah.
you can't. And I feel like that is going back to that being disrespectful to yourself or not. I feel like investing and saving is such an act of self-love, because you're really thinking about that future version of yourself. Because I always think, like, if something bad happens, and again, we don't know our future, that's something that we can't predict, but when like anything happens and we don't have the ability to just like be present in the moment and process what just happened. Like I'm envisioning like, okay, well, what if my husband passed away? It's
Mhm.
like if I don't have the money to pay next month's bills, I don't have the time to grieve his death. Like I would have to be focused so solely on like, well, how am I going to pay the bills? Or if I can't pay the bills, then I have to move in with my in-laws, or like I don't know, you just like total like catastrophe thoughts, all that come through your brain. But it's like, think about all that could be relieved if you
Mhm.
just put in 100 $200 a month of savings, or what, I just made up a number, but like
Yeah.
whatever that is for that person. But it's so interesting seeing how, like, I think a lot of it is just a shift of mindset, is like, it's okay, well, maybe it's not sexy to, I would just use the term sexy, but like it's not fun to invest in that future self. But when you think about what your future self then has the opportunity to partake in and do and just not do also,
Mhm.
like I feel like that just opens up everyone's mindset to like, you know what, like that actually sounds super more fun when I could retire at, 55 years old instead of 70, if I, am a little bit more, you know intentional with how I spend and save money.
Yeah. And people don't like to think about like the morbid part, right? Like
For sure.
hypothetical spouse passing away. But the reality is that happens every day. Young individuals, especially young individuals with kids, the loss of a spouse, all of a sudden it's like two income household, now one income household, and grieving. And it's the situations that you least expect to mess you up that are going to be the ones that mess you up. So if you kind of play the field so that you're well rounded in a financial sense, I think you kind of set yourself up to succeed in any situation that you put yourself in.
Yeah, and I love the example that I used was very morbid and death vibes, because that's like the my past insurance self coming out of
Yeah.
me, like
Well, and you said it, and I was sitting there, and I'm thinking, well, wow, that'd be a great plug if I was an insurance agent. But that just speaks to the need for insurance being part of your financial plan.
that's so true.
Um, Again, not something I sell, something I'm familiar with, and I help people with. But it is definitely an important part of your overall financial plan.
For sure. I mean, so like my background insurance for a few years was like I sold, I mean, car and home insurance, but I also sold like life insurance too. And that is something that I like, once you learn, you don't unlearn things. But it's like, okay, if I can spend like $50 a month on insurance or whatever, I just made up a number.
Yeah.
Like, and if some ungodly situation occurred in the next 30 years, I passed away, I know for a fact my husband's getting a check for like $500,000 or whatever. It's like he doesn't have, like we were just saying, like he doesn't have to worry about, can I pay, to buy our cats food, because that would be
Hmm.
the worst day in our life if we couldn't pay
Right.
for
Or
our cats are our
how long can he
babies.
continue to live in the house that you both pay for? Right.
100%. Yeah. Yeah.
You're living. Life insurance will help kind of bridge the gap for a few years while
For
the
sure.
surviving spouse can kind of figure out what their new life looks like.
For sure. And I feel like that is such a thing. Like when you think about self-love, like that is such a loving thing to do. Not even for yourself, because truthfully, you'll be dead. But for but
For your loved ones,
but
right?
for your loved one, it's like, I love you so much that like I'm gonna put some money away. If something happens, you're covered. Like I
Yep.
don't, because like even just imagining like someone in my family passing away, like that's traumatic,
Yep.
and you want that time to process. And when you can't process it because you're too busy about worrying about bills and stuff, like it's absolutely incredible. Just the opportunities that come and don't come from it. So Okay, so how do you know if you're in a good financial position? Like someone's like, okay, this sounds interesting, but like, where am I starting off of? Like, if they're looking in their savings account and they have like, okay, I have $500 and I maybe own my car outright, but that's maybe it. Maybe I don't have investments. Like, am I in a good position? Like, am I gonna have to work till I'm 80, or like how does this work?
Yeah, I mean, financial situations are kind of like our fingerprints. They're all unique.
Mhm.
So to kind of give you a broad answer, it would be inappropriate for me to do. I would say it's more of, making sure you have that emergency fund in place, making sure
Mhm.
you are obviously living within your means, meaning you are making more than you're spending and you are contributing to additional savings on a regular basis. That's kind of broad based. From there, it really comes down to your personal situation.
Mhm.
Um, and like I said, we're all different. We all have different goals. We all have different things going on. We all have different um, plug and plays happening. So, um, honestly, Sam, at the end of the day, I would just say reach out. If you're listening to the
Mhm.
podcast and you're not sure, you want a second opinion, give me a call, shoot me an email. Um, we'll have a discussion, and that's one of the things that we do a lot here at Shaker Investments is second opinions, and it's
Mhm.
complimentary. A lot of the time, I'll have especially my peers, my friends, my family reach out and say, "Hey, Ashley, can you take a look at what's going on? I'm working with John down the street. I think he's doing a good job, but I don't know what to compare it to because, I don't pay attention to finances like you do."
Mhm.
And I would say 8 out of 10, I look at the portfolio and I look for things such as how much trading is going on in the portfolio, how many fees is this individual paying, what kind of return are they getting on their investments. And 8 times out of 10, I say, look, John's doing a great job for you.
Mhm.
If you're happy with John, John's doing you right. He's doing a good fiduciary job. If you're happy with him, stay with him. And that's kind of one of the things that I'm proud of here at Shaker Investments is how we don't really like to poach individuals. I'm happy to turn clients away if they're in a good position. Obviously, we always want to get as much business as we can. That's
Mhm.
kind of the nature of the game. But at the same time, if you're in good hands and you like who you're working with, that's great. Um, a lot of the time, too, though, at the same time, the individual will come to me and say, "Look, I understand John's doing me a good job, but I just never hear from him. The only time
Mhm.
I hear from him is when I call him with a problem."
Mhm.
I want to work with somebody that's going to be a little bit more hands-on, that I'm going to hear from on a more regular basis, that I can really relate to. And in those situations is typically when um, somebody will make a decision to come work with me instead. On the flip side, there are some times, quite frankly, that you look at a portfolio and you're kind of like, I don't know what's going on here. I can't say that you're doing a good or a bad job. You should give them a call and talk to them about it. Um, there's sometimes a little more happening under the covers than you think, or that
Mhm.
you see from a financial statement.
So to kind of like pivot a little bit, because we were talking about like the as business owners, there's like instability in our paychecks essentially. So
Hmm.
like, what's it like from your end, like working off of, I don't even know if this is 100% your situation, but like working off of commissions or like being in sales and like knowing that you don't have the same paycheck each month,
Hmm.
and also like what's it like being the family breadwinner too?
Yeah, and I think you mentioned that, and I don't know if we mentioned it yet in the for the listeners. So my wife stays at home with the kids right now, so she's currently
Mhm.
unemployed. So like Sam said, it is all on me. The way that I budget though for that is based off of my minimums. That
Mm,
being said, like I know I'm gonna make a minimum of this in my current role.
right.
So anything that I make above that or beyond that, is just extra cash for me, right? So like if I think
Yeah.
about a bonus or um, you mentioned like commission payments, we don't make commissions off of selling anything to
Mhm.
individuals. So we make so the way it works in paying client payments is
Mhm.
sometimes in the financial industry, If I sell a product to somebody, I would make a premium right then or a commission right then.
Right.
Shaker Investments doesn't engage in any of those types of sales. Instead, we only do, our clients pay us for how much money they have us managing for them. So it's called
Mhm.
a percentage of assets under management.
Mhm.
So as your assets grow as a client, our fees grow. So we have an incentive to grow your assets more, because as you continue to have more assets managed by us, your bill to us becomes larger, meaning we have more take home pay.
Yeah.
But when I think about how much money I budget for my family, I do it solely off of like the minimum pay, and then bonuses are extra. So I think when you think about how much money you're going to make, if you sign a minimum of 20, clients in a year. That's your bare minimum. You're definitely going to achieve that goal. Anything above and beyond that is a bonus. So that's what I think about it as,
Yeah.
in my personal planning.
And
And
that
I try to be, sorry to cut you off. I try to be as vanilla in planning as I can,
yeah.
and I underestimate, right? So like
Mm.
even when I'm like coming up with a financial plan for clients, and I do it for myself as well, is I will use projections that I actually believe are low,
Mhm.
because if I can achieve more than that, that's fantastic. But I would rather budget low and exceed than budget too high and fall short.
Yeah. No, I think that's all perfect. So you mentioned about like other firms, maybe they make money on the sale of like a product or something. Why is that not what you do? Like, why is that something to look at?
Um, that kind of falls into the fiduciary part of it.
Mhm.
A little bit. I mean, you could certainly still be a fiduciary and sell like a front-loaded mutual fund. Quite frankly, mutual funds are becoming more of a thing of the past in our investment world.
Mhm.
Um, it's kind of a hard thing to answer, if I'm being quite frank. We invest in low cost funds for our clients and in individual stocks, and there's a lot of reasons that we choose the way to invest what we do. I don't know how much I'm allowed to get into it on the podcast here today,
Mhm.
for compliance purposes.
For sure.
But the way that we invest just doesn't go that route for our clients, and we do it, long story short, because we think that's the best choice for our clients.
Yeah, because I've always heard too, like that's something to just notice if
Hmm.
that's what your advisor does, because sometimes they can, if there's a gray area, they might go on the wrong side of the gray area to try to make money off of you when maybe that's not the best option for the client.
Yeah, and quite frankly, sometimes those advisors are also not charging like quarterly fees. So they're
Mhm.
like trying to figure out maybe a way to make money today off this client, because like the
Yeah,
recurring revenue isn't there for them. It's certainly a different model and a different way of doing things. It's not that it's right or wrong. There's obviously great mutual funds out there that have front load fees that help achieve the financial investment goals of individuals. So I'm not here to bash it in any way. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just
for sure.
not the way that we choose to do things here.
For sure. So I guess on that note, how do you know if you're dealing with a bad advisor?
That's a good question. um, you know, there's a couple things that stick out to me when I think about the advisor I want to be, and it really all comes down to more about the person and less about your portfolio. Quite
Mhm.
honestly, when you think about a good or a bad advisor, it's you want to work with somebody, and you learn this in business school or somewhere in life, somewhere along the lines. I learned this. Everybody in business wants to work with somebody that they can relate to, that's like them, right?
Right.
So, picking an advisor that you can relate to, finding somebody that's gonna listen to your questions,
Mm-hmm.
Try to find answers for your questions. Not diminish the questions that you're asking, not think that your questions are silly or stupid or inappropriate. Um, Advisors that you can be open and honest with, that you can feel like you can sit across the table from them and actually like tell them what's actually going on. I know sometimes we think about financial situations as being a little taboo and not wanting to talk about it. Um, you find a trusted advisor, and obviously anything that a client tells me is between the two of us. It's like going to the doctor. I'm not going to tell anybody, especially for friends, right? I'm not going to tell anybody what we talked about behind closed doors. So, really finding somebody that you can trust, finding somebody that is aligned with you, finding somebody that you can be open and honest with, and have those hard, difficult conversations on both sides of the table. I think that's the most important thing. Then comes the part of what that person can offer from an investment standpoint is another conversation. But these days, most advisors kind of have about the same opportunities as far as investing options. So that part, as long as they're using them in the right way, is is the important part. Is who they are and how they make you feel. I think is really important.
And it's really interesting how parallel that is to like the coaching industry too, because as a coach, like there's lots of coaches out there, and I feel like a lot of people will coach with one coach and they'll be like, "Oh, this is how all coaches are," or "This is the way that you're supposed to be
Hmm.
coached," kind of thing. But you learn like everyone has their own way of going about things. It's like, yes, like at least in the coaching world, it's like, yes, we're learning more about yourself and your brain and more self-awareness in that capacity. Like, so the results are generally the same, but how you get there is so different. And in my personal opinion, I think how you get there is sometimes more important than just the end result itself, because
Yeah,
like the journey is where you spend most of your time in, and
yeah,
if you can enjoy that conversation with that coach, and in this case your advisor, like you can just genuinely like not have those fears or like those worries, or like if something comes up, you have someone to go back to and that will help you out and like be there every step of the way. It's like that, to me personally, is so much more important than just um oh, this person can make me an extra $5 at the end of the day.
yeah. I mean, somebody that's responsive, that's going to answer your questions, respond to your emails. Honestly, my favorite thing to do sometimes with my clients is take them to a Cavs game.
Yeah.
Kind of get to know them on a personal level. Talk about their kids and check in, and those are the people that you want, around and by your side through life.
100%.
Hey guys, I wanted to speak real quickly into what it's like to coach with me, to work with me. This is something that I get asked often, and I just wanted to put it in here real quick. Coaching is different than a therapist, which is different than just chatting up with a friend. So, with a life coach such as myself, there is no prep work. You just show up, right? There's no homework. You don't have to worry about doing things after the session. This is us sitting together, whether it's in person or over Zoom, whatever you prefer, and essentially sitting together and looking at your brain, becoming more self-aware of why you're doing what you're doing so we can create sustainable habit changes. After a few sessions, I promise you will start seeing results in how you are working, how you are thinking, and this will create the results you are looking for, promised. So, with that being said, I'm actually offering one free session to try me. Try me? To try coaching with me. So use the code TAE, short for the Authentic Entrepreneur, and in an email, just send me an email at sam@samhardistycoaching.com. That's sam@samhardistycoaching.com. And in the subject, just say free coaching, TAE, and let me know more about the results you are looking for, and let's get that scheduled for free. There is 100% zero sales pitch at the end. It's literally just me offering this up to you as a free resource. I want to see you improve. I want to see you get better. I want to see you become that next version of yourself, that better version of yourself, and I am here to help you with that. So feel free, please use this offer, this resource, a free one-on-one coaching session with me. Use the code TAE. Send me an email at sam@samhardestycoaching.com to get this scheduled. Now back to the podcast.
So I know that being in the financial industry is a very like masculine, male, traditional, like everything dominated industry, right?
Yeah.
So I guess like it's a two-part question is like what's it like being a woman in the industry, and then what's it
Yeah.
also like being married to a woman in the industry, knowing that it's generally a male dominated industry and also a very traditionally uh aware mindset industry.
Yeah. I mean,
Obviously summarizing.
yeah, of course. Historically, the financial industry has been overwhelmingly male and Caucasian,
Mhm.
which is actually interesting because now it's making a push for diversity in both, ethnicity and gender identification.
Yeah.
And to be quite frank, a lot of the time I go to a financial event, like for example, the CFA Society of Cleveland here in town.
Mhm.
They host monthly events. You walk in the room, it's primarily males, and that's okay. And the more you do it, at first, when I was early in my career, everything was intimidating, of course, but um, walking into a room of all dudes was a little bit intimidating. I think I'm just so used to and accustomed to it now, that I don't think of it as much anymore.
Mhm.
Um, there are a lot of events too that are like women focused in the financial industry or diversity focused in the financial industry. So I go to a lot of events, and I'm talking, for example, I was in New York City at an emerging manager conference last month. And so there's people of that look all different, right? So it's encouraging that we're going that route. I like to see it. There's more women advisors being, coming up along the ranks all over the place. It's not as bad as you think. I don't think my sexuality
Mhm.
changes any of it. I mean, maybe call it a typical lesbian. I like watching sports and playing sports, and maybe I
Mhm.
relate to the men a little bit more than straight woman would.
Mhm.
But I walk into the room, and when I started here at Shaker Investments, I don't remember how many employees we had, maybe 9 at the time. I was the only full-time woman employee. So
Oh,
my
wow.
first job out of college, um, coming in here, and like it was just a room of men, and it was just kind of what I became used to.
Right.
Not it's lovely when I see more women coming up along the ranks, but it certainly has a long way to go.
Yeah. Yeah. Very interesting. It's
It's
okay.
No, it is very interesting, and I think everybody is aware of it, right? Like I
Yeah.
said, there's the emerging managers where they're pushing it, um, and even like I know in the colleges, there
Mhm.
was discussion like when I was doing my CFP coursework, the colleges are kind of encouraging more women to come into the financial industry, and like kind of showing them even on the high school level, career opportunities in the financial industry.
Mhm.
But it's still, like I said, has a long way to go.
Yeah. I think it's interesting how I like as you're saying like there is this slow shift over the generations and over the years of I think when you're always told how things are supposed to look in your life, and when that you know fog kind of releases itself, or however you want to look at it, and you learn
Hmm.
like, oh, like no, I can pretty much do whatever I want. I think a lot of it then just comes over time with like your risk tolerance with just your ability to try something new or willingness to do something new, like to, I don't know, play around and have fun with something new.
Yeah, and I think, you know, it being like in the high school level of teaching, young girls that you can be in the financial industry and that's not taboo. I mean,
Mhm.
you think like traditional women jobs, like clerical jobs,
Right.
bookkeeping jobs, maybe tax side of things, nurses, there's a ton of them. But like the gender piece of what a career looks like is, I think, vastly different than when we were in high school. And
Yes.
I think the young individuals that are, in high school and college now, um, don't really identify as much a gender to a career.
Yeah. Yeah. So to pivot a little bit, and I think you've answered this, but just to make sure it's clear, is like, do you have to have an advisor to invest money?
You certainly do not. No.
Mhm.
Um, I would recommend it just
Mhm.
because, we are professionals, we are the best at what we do. Um, but anybody can open up an investment account and choose what they want to go with and go with it. And, quite frankly, a lot of them very successful.
Mhm.
Um, a lot of them not so successful. So, and that's not to say that an advisor can be successful or not successful. I mean, be frank, we all lose money in the investment market at some point. So you don't need an advisor, although an advisor is going to help kind of well round and make sure that you're on the right track.
Like as you started speaking, I this like analogy or metaphor rather like came right to front of mind, and it's like dyeing your hair. You could go to the store and get like box dye and do it yourself, or you go into the salon and have someone do it. At the end of the day, technically, yes, your hair is dyed, but it's whether if it turns out purple or actually the shade of blonde that you're actually looking for. uh,
Yeah, I mean, you know,
Sometimes you learn your tips and tricks over time with boxes, and it works out that way. Other times you're like, you know what, this is one thing I don't really care to you know play around with fate, and we'll just
yeah, I mean, COVID was a big push into retail investing. Retail investing, we say, is a term that we use for individuals investing without advisory.
mm-hmm.
So retail investors became very popular during COVID. A combination of stimulus checks and a lot of time on your hand did not do a whole lot of anything else because you weren't allowed to. We saw a lot of retail investors enter the market, and that was the rise of the meme stocks.
Mm-hmm.
And for anybody that doesn't pay too much attention, it's kind of hard to miss meme stocks just in the world. But there were a lot of stocks that traded at valuations or prices that were really inappropriate for what the company actually was doing. Um, but it was like a push of individuals buying or selling that stock that kind of made those things happen. Um, Again, some people rode it up and got out on the right time, and some people did not sell at the right time. And you always say in investing, buy low, sell high. In
Mm-hmm.
those situations, you had a lot of investors buy high and sell low.
Oh
So
yeah.
there were a lot of inappropriate investing things happen in the world on the individual side, just because people weren't educated on what they were actually doing.
Yeah.
So that's where, you wouldn't hire just somebody off the street to fix your car, right?
Mm-hmm.
You want a professional to fix your car. You want a professional to look at you from a health standpoint. You want a professional to look at your finances. I mean, your
Yeah.
finances are a big role in who we are and where we're going is your kind of financial picture overall. And I think professional help is appropriate there.
So, big picture, what advice would you give to someone in their 20s, like just financial advice, investment advice, like what's just big picture? What would you tell like your 20-year-old self? What advice would you give them?
Yeah, I would tell my 20-year-old self to spend less and save more. I mean, it sounds simple and boring, quite frankly. But I was not always the best steward of money.
Mhm.
I didn't always have the most money. I still certainly don't have the most money. But I would get a sum of money and I would think, what can I buy with this? And that's, a lot of the time, that's when I learn about those big mistakes that people do. And I would do it over and over again, and then eventually I was like, well, what do I actually want to do? And that's when I started to, think, okay, well, let's just start saving some of it. And,
Mhm.
the saving just started to compound because I'm like, do I actually need those things, right? Um, so I would just tell, any young individual, like, starting off, just think about what you want to do, make a budget. And it
Mhm.
doesn't have to be necessarily a budget per se, but know where your money's going.
Mhm.
And I say that in, like, once a month, maybe once a week, if you're just starting out, look at that credit card bill or look at that bank statement and say, how much money am I spending on takeout? And how much money am I spending on things that I don't use, like a gym membership or a Netflix and Hulu and Disney Plus and, all those,
Yeah.
subscriptions. Um, and be a good steward of your cash because you're the only one that's going to do it for yourself.
Mhm.
You're the only one that's going to make it for yourself, and you're the only one that's going to save it for yourself.
Mhm.
And you're going to reach an age where working isn't going to be a possibility anymore, and then
Mhm.
you're going to rely on somebody else. You don't want to put yourself in this situation, so rely on how hard you worked in your young age, to get to where you want to go.
I love that. Something fun that, well, our future selves will think it's fun, that Ian and I just started doing is anytime we get cash, because we don't come across it often. So anytime we get um, cash for birthday presents or Christmas or just throughout the year in whatever way, we put it in a water jug. There's no water in it, just so that's clear. But like an empty jug. So any money, cash, coins, anything, we just put right in there. And our thought is, we'll use that for like if we go on vacation or something, like that is the money that we use. So we don't have to worry about like saving up for vacations, rather than when we do want to save intentionally, we can save toward investments. And then like the the money jug will be toward vacation. And then we get to choose, okay, well, we have $300 in the money jug. What do we want to do on the vacation? Or, hey, we got, a lot of money this year in cash and we have $1,000. Like,
Yeah.
kind of pick and choose what you want to do with that. So it's almost like a little game, kind of like,
hmm
just like this thing fun to do on the side.
I would have to say, as a financial professional, my kids both also have piggy banks, which is kind of the same idea, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And we put money in there, and about once a year, I take the money out and I put it in their bank account.
Mhm.
They've got like children's savings accounts
Yeah.
that earn interest, and that's the point of that, right? So like
Love
you've
that.
got this jug of money that is like inflation is, I don't know what it's at today, maybe 3, 4, or 5%,
Right.
and your cash is just sitting there not earning a dime. So last money tip of the day: make sure that your money is not sitting in a jug for too long and earning interest in some capacity.
I love that. That's such a great advice. Even just like a reminder for kids and saving money in that way. So,
Yeah, I mean, their grandparents give them, every once in a while, $20, $50, whatever it is for
yeah.
holidays, birthdays, whatever. And they're like, go put it in your piggy bank. And like before I can say no, they're like putting it in. I'm like, that's gonna go in the bank account, and it all works out.
Yep. I love it. Okay, so last question.
Sure.
What advice would you give to other women to living their most authentic selves?
Wow. I don't know. I think my whole lifestyle, even from like a young teenager, was just doing whatever I wanted, unapologetically. Obviously, doing the right thing,
Mhm.
but doing it the right thing my way. And I think that is kind of what I would say. I mean, you can always put your personality and your twist on doing the right thing, following that path and setting your eyes to what you want to achieve. But, it doesn't mean you have to do it the same way the people before you did. For example, I'm wearing a pretty loud shirt today.
Just for
The
me, I will.
financial industry is pretty black suit, blue suit, white shirt, and pretty boring. But I try to be a little bit more exciting than that.
Mhm.
Again, just doing the right thing, with my little twist. So don't lose sight of who you want to be and what you want to do, but kind of make sure that you set yourself on a path to actually achieve those goals.
I love that. I love that. Okay, so where can people find you? Do you have any offerings going right now? How can people learn more about you, work with you, all the things?
Yeah, I don't have any offerings right now. I don't think we really offer offerings. I think I mentioned it a little bit earlier in the podcast. Always available to do a second review or just to sit down with people and talk about where they're at.
That counts as an
Um,
offering.
that's
Yeah.
an offering. So it's
That's awesome.
complimentary. We'll go grab coffee or sit in my office if you prefer, and talk about whatever it is you want to talk about, whatever financial goals you want to talk about. If it's reviewing a portfolio, then great. If it's just starting off, how do I start off and what to do, that's also great. So those are always complimentary. You can reach me at my email.
Which I'll put in the show
So
notes. Yep.
yeah, so you reach me in my email. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Instagram, but that's just going to be pure, personal and a lot of pictures of my kids if you're into that. So Instagram is going to be agray244. And then, like Sam said, she'll drop everything else in the bio.
Show notes. Yeah.
Show notes in the show notes. So
They're paralleled in some way. Yeah. I love it. Awesome. All right. Well, Ashley, thank you so much for taking the time to speak into all the things you do today. I learned a lot. I hope everyone else listening, I'm sure, has learned so much. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And I hope you have a fabulous day.
absolutely, and thanks for having me.
My pleasure.
Bye.
It's offer time, my friends. Ashley is offering a no obligation portfolio review for any of the Authentic Entrepreneur podcast listeners. This is a really cool opportunity, so get connected with her contact information in the show notes and get that no obligation free portfolio review. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Authentic Entrepreneur podcast. I hope in between the words of this episode, you found more of your authentic self. It would mean the world to me if you, 1, like this episode if you learned something new, 2, share this episode with a friend who you think needs to hear this, and lastly, 3, to follow and subscribe to this podcast. I want to hang out with you more. Don't forget to tag me on Instagram, send me a DM, wave hi, whatever floats your boat, all at Sam Hardesty Coaching. That's at Sam Hardesty Coaching on Instagram. And hey, look at you go. Learning new things, becoming more self-aware and shit. Absolutely crushing it, my friend. Thank you so much. I love you. And until next time, stay authentic.